Sunday afternoons sold as glory and courage. Crowds cheering violence disguised as tradition. Bodies colliding under billion-dollar lights. Pain treated as weakness, silence as strength. Locker rooms smelling of sweat and chemicals. Injuries hidden beneath tape and bravado. A culture built on enduring what should break you, where toughness is measured by how much you endure. Before the cameras, heroes rise and fall. Behind closed doors, suffering is normalized. Doctors walk in with clipboards and syringes. Players don't ask what's inside. They only ask if they can play. Because missing a game means losing everything. Contracts, respect, roster spots vanish quickly. Pain becomes currency in this system. Every hit adds interest to an invisible debt. And no one talks about the bill. Because the bill comes later. Long after the crowd goes home. Long after the jerseys are folded. The NFL celebrates the spectacle. But never the cost. This is where the story really begins. Not on the field, but in the shadows beneath it. White heavy checkmark inside the locker room. Rituals replace medicine. Small cups handed out without explanation. Pills passed like candy before kickoff. Anti-inflammatories, opioids, muscle relaxers. Names no one remembers. Doses no one tracks. Players trust the system blindly. Because questioning means weakness. And weakness means replacement. The pain fades just enough. The numbness creates an illusion of health. Bodies move when they should stop. Ligaments tear without warning. Bones grind against each other silently. The body screams, but the drugs mute it. And the game goes on. Doctors call it treatment. Players call it survival. The league calls it none of their business. Because officially, it doesn't exist. There are no headlines for locker room pills. No highlight reels of injections. Just silence wrapped in medical jargon. A system that works best when no one looks too closely. If you care about what really happens behind the NFL's image, the stories they don't promote, the truths they don't highlight, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we uncover what gets buried. White heavy checkmark former players would later describe it. A pharmacy with lockers instead of shelves. Prescriptions without prescriptions. Treatment without diagnosis. Shots administered minutes before kickoff. Pain erased just long enough to perform. Injuries worsened because they couldn't be felt. A torn shoulder becomes permanent damage. A fractured spine becomes lifelong pain. But on Sunday, everything looks fine. The NFL points to independent doctors. Yet independence disappears under pressure. Win now, evaluate later. The league thrives on availability. And painkillers guarantee availability. No drug tests for legality of treatment. No oversight on long-term impact. Only results matter. And results require bodies on the field. At any cost. White heavy checkmark. The culture is taught early. College programs mirror the same habits. By the time players reach the NFL, they are already conditioned. Pain is temporary. Careers are fragile. The league rewards silence. Those who complain don't last. Those who comply get paid. Doctors become gatekeepers to opportunity. Medical decisions shaped by coaching demands. Return-to-play timelines accelerated. Warnings ignored. Because tomorrow's game matters more than next year's health. This is not accidental. This is structural. A system designed to maximize output while minimizing responsibility. White heavy checkmark retirement is where the truth emerges. When the drugs stop. And the pain returns with interest. Nerve damage. Joint degeneration. Chronic migraines. Dependency that doesn't disappear. Many players don't realize they're addicted. Until they can't function without pills. Prescriptions dry up. Insurance fades. Support vanishes. The league celebrates legends. But forgets the broken men. Depression becomes common. So does isolation. The roar of the crowd replaced by silence. And the body remembers everything. Every hit. Every injection. Every ignored warning. White heavy checkmark. The first cracks appeared after retirement. When the weekly injections stopped, when the pills were no longer provided, when pain returned without warning, morning stiffness turned into constant agony. Simple movements became negotiations with the body. Sleep disappeared before memories did. Former players searched for answers. Doctors no longer affiliated with teams. Diagnoses came too late. Degenerative damage explained years of silence. Ligaments worn beyond repair. Spines permanently compromised. Organs affected by prolonged medication. Addiction quietly revealed itself, not through excess, but through absence. When functioning required chemicals, prescriptions became lifelines, and shame followed dependency. The league offered no roadmap, no transition care, no acknowledgement of causality. Pain was reframed as personal misfortune, not occupational consequence. Responsibility dissolved into bureaucracy. Phone calls went unanswered. Support programs felt distant. Medical bills replaced paychecks. Identity collapsed alongside physical decline. The applause was gone. The purpose vanished. And the body remembered everything. Each Sunday hit. Each rushed recovery. Each ignored warning sign. Retirement exposed the truth. The system never planned for life after football, because broken bodies were never part of the narrative. If this is the first time you're hearing this, that's not an accident. Subscribe now, because this channel exists to document what the league prefers you never see. White heavy checkmark. Some players tried to speak publicly. They told stories that sounded identical. Locker room cups with unnamed pills. Injections administered without explanation. Pressure masked as encouragement. Play or be replaced. Sit out and be forgotten. Medical consent blurred by fear. Team doctors held conflicting loyalties. Healing competed with performance. Performance always won. Voices that challenged the norm were isolated. Labeled unreliable. Painted as disgruntled. Their credibility attacked before their claims. Media narratives softened the damage. Words like resilience replaced injury. Sacrifice replaced negligence. The league distanced itself strategically. Responsibility shifted to individuals. A system defended itself by fragmentation. No single hand held the blame. Stories scattered across decades. Connected only by suffering. Patterns dismissed as coincidence. Until the volume became undeniable. Yet acknowledgement remained carefully worded. Never admitting intent. Never admitting design. Only regret without accountability. Silence became policy. Because silence preserved the brand. And the brand mattered more than truth. White heavy checkmark. Behind closed doors the response was calculated. Public relations replaced introspection. Statements were drafted to minimize exposure. Committees formed without power. Research funded with limitations. Questions framed to avoid conclusions. Painkiller discussions redirected elsewhere. Focus shifted to equipment and rules. Anything visible on the field. Anything that looked proactive. Chemical dependence stayed invisible. Because it left no bruises on camera. No viral moments. No slow-motion replays. Addiction unfolded privately. Away from stadium lights. Making it easier to deny. The league mastered deflection. By controlling language. By emphasizing choice. By ignoring coercion. Players were adults, they claimed. Yet adults trapped in unequal power. Medical authority leveraged against employment. A system protected itself through ambiguity. Never lying directly. But never telling the full truth. Because partial truth is safer. And safer narratives protect profits. White heavy checkmark. The culture that sustained the system was inherited. Passed down from veterans to rookies. From coaches to trainers. From front offices to sidelines. Pain was reframed as obligation. Endurance mistaken for loyalty. Questioning medical advice meant questioning toughness. And toughness defined careers. Rookies learned quickly what silence bought. More snaps. More trust. More opportunity. The injured who complied stayed visible. Those who resisted disappeared quietly. Depth charts became leverage. Injuries became negotiation tools. Return timelines shortened by necessity, not by recovery. A player's body became collateral, traded for relevance. Every season reset the gamble. Short careers demanded immediate sacrifice. Long-term health was an abstract concept. Future pain discounted against present survival. No one taught players how to say no, because no was never an option. The system functioned smoothly, because belief replaced consent, and tradition replaced ethics. Every generation reinforced the next, normalizing harm through repetition, until abuse felt routine, and routine stopped being questioned. This was not chaos. It was order, an organized tolerance for damage, designed to keep the game uninterrupted. White heavy checkmark medical oversight existed mostly on paper. Policies drafted far from locker rooms. Compliance measured by documentation, not by lived experience. Painkiller distribution lacked transparency. Records incomplete or non-existent. Treatments justified as standard practice, even when standards were undefined. Accountability dissolved across departments. Teams blamed doctors. Doctors blamed league norms. The league blamed individual choice. Responsibility moved endlessly, never landing anywhere permanent. Investigations stalled without access. Testimonies dismissed as anecdotal. Patterns ignored until legally unavoidable. When lawsuits emerged, they were framed as isolated disputes, not systemic failures. Settlements prioritized silence over truth. Non-disclosure replaced reform. Money replaced admission. Public outrage cooled with time. The league waited patiently, because time always favors institutions. While bodies deteriorate quietly, out of frame, out of memory, progress was announced selectively. Reforms emphasized optics, not substance, and the system survived by evolving language, while maintaining the same incentives. White heavy checkmark. For many former players, the damage never stabilized. Pain expanded beyond joints and muscles. Nervous systems altered permanently. Sleep disrupted by constant discomfort. Mental health declined alongside physical collapse. Dependency blurred into necessity. Some sought relief elsewhere. When prescriptions ended abruptly, self-medication filled the void. Families witnessed transformations they couldn't explain. Irritability replaced confidence. Isolation replaced structure. The loss of identity compounded suffering. Football had defined everything, and now even walking hurt. Support networks proved insufficient. Assistance programs limited and temporary. The league's distance felt intentional, as if separation erased obligation. Former players became cautionary tales, but never official warnings. Their stories circulated privately, rarely amplified publicly, because visibility threatened the narrative. That football prepares you for life. Instead of shortening it, the human cost stayed individualized, never framed as collective consequence. Yet patterns repeated relentlessly, across teams, across eras, across generations, leaving no doubt about origin, only denial about responsibility. White heavy checkmark. The league's public image remained carefully protected. Sunday broadcasts avoided uncomfortable realities. Commentary glorified sacrifice without context. Injuries were framed as badges of honor. Pain management remained unspoken. Pharmaceutical reliance stayed off script. Marketing emphasized toughness and unity, never vulnerability or aftermath. Fans consumed stories designed for comfort, not complexity, not consequence. The machine relied on selective visibility, showing hits, not recovery, showing glory, not rehabilitation. Behind-the-scenes silence was enforced. Through contracts and cultural pressure, former players learned restraint. Speaking freely risked reputation. Media access diminished after criticism. Opportunities disappeared quietly. Advocacy carried personal cost. and little institutional support. The league controlled its narrative ecosystem, from broadcasts to sponsorships, shaping perception through repetition, making alternative truths harder to hear. Painkiller stories lacked dramatic footage, making them easy to ignore. No single moment captured the damage. Only slow deterioration, spread across years, which cameras rarely follow. This invisibility was convenient, allowing denial to persist, without obvious contradiction. The absence of proof was treated as proof. Even when testimonies accumulated, the burden shifted to the injured, to explain the inexplicable, to quantify suffering. In systems not designed to listen, public sympathy remained conditional, dependent on entertainment value. The league understood attention cycles and waited them out, because outrage fades, but institutions endure, and silence completes the strategy. White heavy checkmark. Over time, research began filling gaps. Independent studies contradicted league narratives, linking long-term drug use to lasting harm. Data echoed personal testimonies. Patterns previously dismissed gained clarity. Yet acknowledgement lagged behind evidence, because acceptance implied liability, and liability threatened revenue. The league responded with partial engagement, funding studies with boundaries, supporting awareness without accountability, framing harm as historical, not ongoing. Responsibility shifted to improved eras, while affected players remained unsupported. Progress was declared prematurely, as if time healed structural damage. But bodies do not update with policies. Damage persists beyond reforms, especially when exposure lasted years. Medical trust had already been broken. Confidence in oversight eroded. Players questioned past decisions, made without informed consent. Regret compounded physical pain, knowing alternatives were never offered. Transparency came too late, after careers ended, after damage settled permanently. The league emphasized evolution, while avoiding restitution, growth without repair, change without admission. This approach preserved image, while sidestepping moral obligation. Healing requires acknowledgement, not branding, not carefully worded statements. Without truth there is no closure, only prolonged resentment and unresolved harm. The distance between promise and reality widened. Trust deteriorated further among current and former players, who recognized familiar patterns in new initiatives, presented as solutions, but built on old foundations, leaving fundamental incentives untouched and consequences unresolved. White heavy checkmark. Ultimately, the painkiller system revealed priorities. Health was conditional. Profit was permanent. Bodies were tools within an entertainment economy, maintained just long enough to perform, then replaced efficiently. The system rewarded availability, not longevity, and availability required chemical assistance. This reality contradicted public messaging, but aligned perfectly with business logic. Risk was externalized onto players, while rewards concentrated upward. Medical harm became an acceptable expense, absorbed by individuals, families, communities, never by the institution. Accountability remained fragmented, preventing collective reckoning. The league survived by normalization, making harm feel inevitable, rather than preventable. Choice was emphasized selectively, ignoring power imbalance and economic coercion. Players entered contracts young, with limited leverage and incomplete information. Consent existed in form, but not in substance. The consequences unfolded silently, long after cheers ended, leaving players alone with outcomes. This was not negligence alone. It was calculated tolerance of known harm in service of continuity. The games continued uninterrupted, while lives deteriorated privately. The gap between spectacle and reality widened, exposing the cost of denial. Every injection delayed reckoning, but increased future damage. The system postponed responsibility until individuals bore it alone. And by then, correction was impossible. Only acknowledgement remained, alongside irreversible loss. White heavy checkmark. The story ends where accountability begins, with unanswered questions lingering about who benefits from silence and who pays for it. The painkiller system thrived on invisibility, sustained by trust without transparency, and authority without oversight. It functioned because success demanded it, and questioning threatened stability. The League now speaks of responsibility, of care and progress, but history remains unresolved. Former players carry evidence in their bodies, scars that documentation cannot erase. Their suffering forms a record, more honest than any report. The system did not fail accidentally. It succeeded by design, maximizing performance, minimizing accountability, treating harm as collateral, and recovery as optional. This truth challenges comfortable narratives about heroism and sacrifice. It asks uncomfortable questions of fans, of institutions, of culture itself. Entertainment demanded endurance, and endurance required chemical silence. The bill arrived quietly, long after profits were secured. Recognition came slowly, often too late to matter. Justice remains incomplete, because acknowledgement without repair is hollow. The League moves forward, but the damage remains, etched into lives beyond the spotlight. This story is not about the past. It is about consequences that persist, about systems that normalize harm, until harm feels ordinary. Remembering is an act of resistance against convenient forgetting, because silence protects power, and truth disrupts it. The question is no longer what happened, but what will be done for those already broken, and whether the system truly changes. These stories don't end here. If you don't want this history erased, subscribe. New investigations are coming, and some truths only survive if people keep watching.